The anime starts off with the dark sorcerer sitting on the central chair of his castle. His name is Zagan, and the castle is a clear reflection of the power and authority he possesses over normal people who have no magical power over each other. Soon, a pretty girl with white hair appears before him. The sorcerer seems to have a serious and unfazed look on his face as he listens to what the girl has to say. However, the next words she utters send him into shock and make the sorcerer seem more human. She asks him how she will be killed. As it turns out, she's actually his slave. This takes the sorcerer by absolute surprise, and he doesn't even know how to respond. In fact, he thinks to himself that he doesn't even know how to talk to a girl, despite being a powerful sorcerer. I guess that's what happens when you spend most of your time alone, dealing with magic and not talking to people. He doesn't know what to say, but still manages to keep a cool composure, since he is a powerful sorcerer after all. The scene cuts to an event before this one. An innocent girl is attacked by another sorcerer, who is planning to attack her for his own needs. Zagan appears out of nowhere and grabs his pathetic fellow sorcerer by the head. It turns out this area is actually his territory, and the noise from all the fighting was annoying him. The pathetic man, being grabbed by someone much more powerful than him, makes one final attempt to save himself by offering his research on magic. In return, Zagan would have to let him go. That didn't strike Zagan as a fair deal, considering he was a lot stronger to begin with. Zagan literally blows the man's head into small pieces. This scares the girl even more, sending her into shock. This is another situation in which he doesn't know what to do, and he begins to panic like a little boy. He has to remind himself to keep his cool as a powerful sorcerer, and so he does. He uses his magic to heal the girl's wounds and decides to walk away. Zagan notes the cross around the girl's neck and realizes that she's actually with the church. The church is one of the worst enemies of all sorcerers, and it's quite ironic that he ends up saving one of them while killing one of his own. But he couldn't care less, as all he cared about was magic. Suddenly, one of his only friends appears out of nowhere. His name is Barbados, and he kinda looks evil, but at the same time, he gives off an impression of incompetence. He tells Zagan that one of the archdemons recently died, and there is now an opening to join. How that works is basically, you have to apply on their official website and submit your LinkedIn profile. Okay, I'm just joking. The way it actually works is that you have to be chosen by them. Basically, you don't go to them, they come to you. They also bestow upon you a tremendous amount of mana that you can wield to destroy any foe you please, along with the knowledge of the darkest secrets of magic. However, despite all that this designation has to offer, Zagan isn't particularly interested. In fact, he doesn't think he'll even be chosen to begin with. Barbados then tells him about an auction that's going on in a city, saying there's something he might be interested in. However, the only reason Barbados tells him that is because he just wants to borrow money from Zagan. Zagan disagrees and decides to go to the auction with him instead. As they're traveling, Barbados tries to convince Zagan to lend him money to the best of his ability, but his efforts end up in vain as they reach the site of the auction. It's a huge stadium, filled with tons of sorcerers who are candidates for the next archdemon title. The auctioneer suddenly reveals a beautiful, white-haired girl from under a cloak and gives a description of how rare this elf is. He says things like elves are closer to gods or something, but it all just seems like nonsense in hopes of getting people to bid higher. To his surprise, the description wasn't even necessary, as Zagan falls in awe with the elf out of nowhere and decides to offer all his savings for her. And yes, that was well over the auctioneer's asking price. Everyone is amazed at how much he just spent on one elf. He flies away with his newly purchased elf, amazed at how beautiful she is. He then suddenly gets nervous like a little boy again, not knowing what to do or say. We suddenly cut back to the scene where she stands in front of Zagan, just as he's wondering what to say to her, like a typical confused boy who doesn't know how to talk to a girl. The confused elf asks how she'll be murdered. Despite being nervous, he keeps calm and reassures her that no such thing will happen under his watch and that she will be spared. This gives our anxious sorcerer a chance to introduce himself and engage in small talk. Then came one of the hardest tasks of his life. He had to ask her name. Thankfully, she introduces herself without him having to ask. Her name is Nephilia, or Shekinelsi. Also be called Nephi, which is even cuter if I do say so myself. The elf is extremely servile in every way, as she even goes as far as to prove her virginity without Zagan asking anything. Zagan soon shows Neffy to her new room and clears out all the old, unnecessary things with his magic. Neffy looks out of the window from her new home, realizing this will be her new life. The episode continues with Zagun and Neffy's slowly developing relationship as they navigate their daily lives, filled with both awkward and sweet moments. Zagun, the powerful sorcerer who is not used to interacting with people, especially women, continues to struggle with his feelings for Neffy, the gentle elf he purchased in the auction. Their growing bond is characterized by Zagun's attempts to act stoic and composed, while in reality, he is slowly softening under Neffy's influence. The episode opens with Neffy sleeping by Zagun's throne instead of her room, as Zagun accidentally damaged it with his magic during his previous attempts to clear it out. This scene highlights Zagun's internal conflict. While he tries to maintain a powerful image, he is rendered vulnerable by Neffy's innocent and kind demeanor. His imagination begins to run wild as he watches her sleep peacefully beside him, which emphasizes his inexperience in dealing with close proximity to someone he cares about. When Neffy wakes up and sweetly wishes him good morning, Zagun is left flustered as he realizes that there are no spells or magical books that teach him how to respond to such gestures. His instinctive reaction is to offer food, but his choice, a simple jerky, shows how out of touch he is with normal human interactions, as jerky is hardly the kind of meal you'd expect to serve a companion, especially a beautiful elf like Neffy. Neffy's offer to cook for him if he can buy groceries visibly flusters Zagun, and the idea of tasting her home-cooked meal fills him with excitement. This moment is a breakthrough for him as he experiences a genuine connection to another person. The pair heads into the city to purchase groceries, but they quickly face a small obstacle when Zagun realizes that he is broke after spending all his money on purchasing Neffy at the auction. This comedic element adds a lighthearted touch to their adventure. As they continue on foot, they witness a group of bandits attacking a cart full of passengers. Neffy, being naturally timid, is frightened by the scene. Zagun, wanting to impress her, strikes the bandits with a powerful display of lightning magic. He easily subdues the attackers, including a rival sorcerer who attempts to use fire magic. Zagun not only defeats him but takes control of the sorcerer's magic, asserting his dominance. Despite the situation being a mere display of Zagun's prowess, it becomes clear that his underlying motive was to show off for Neffy and perhaps make her feel safer in his presence. Once they arrive in the city, Zagun buys Neffy new clothes. The scene in the clothing shop adds another humorous and tender moment to their relationship when the shopkeeper, assuming that Zagun, being a sorcerer, wants something scandalous, offers a revealing outfit for Neffy. Both Neffy and Zagun are embarrassed, and they quickly request a more modest outfit. The shopkeeper then presents Neffy with a simple yet elegant maid outfit, which both of them love. This scene illustrates the innocent and endearing nature of their relationship. Zagun might be a fearsome sorcerer, but around Neffy, he's just an awkward man trying to make a good impression. Their next stop is a blacksmith, where Zagun hopes to remove the collar that symbolizes Neffy's past as a slave. However, the blacksmith informs them that the collar is bound by powerful magic, and any attempt to remove it could be dangerous. Although Zagun tries to pay the blacksmith for his advice, the blacksmith refuses, citing Zagun's previous kindness in saving him from bandits. After a day of shopping, Zagun suggests that they eat out to avoid overworking Neffy. They find a cozy restaurant, and as they sit down, Neffy expresses her concern about whether Zagun truly wants to remove her collar. She wonders if he's afraid she'll leave him once it's gone. Zagun, secretly affected by the idea of losing her, tries to keep his emotions in check, replying that since he can't remove it for now, she'll be staying with him. Neffy, unexpectedly relieved by this answer, hints at her growing attachment to Zagun. The scene takes a tender turn when Neffy struggles with using utensils, having never learned how to eat with a knife and fork. Zagun patiently teaches her, and this act of care makes Neffy blush, emphasizing the deepening bond between them. In return, she offers to feed Zagun herself, and the intimate gesture flusters him. The romantic tension between them becomes evident to everyone in the restaurant, and Zaegun, embarrassed by the public attention, quickly leaves with Nefi. Meanwhile, the girl from the church who Zaegun once saved is seen reflecting on her experience. Despite the church's general stance that sorcerers are evil, she is conflicted because Zaegun had saved her life. The head of the church reminds her of the threat sorcerers pose, and although she is shocked by the accusations that Zaegun has been harming civilians, she accepts her duty to take down the sorcerer, setting the stage for future conflict. This episode highlights the contrast between Zaegun's powerful sorcerer persona and his awkward, developing affection for Nefi. It deepens the emotional core of their relationship while setting up potential external threats from the church, creating a balanced mix of romance, comedy, and intrigue. The following day begins with Zaegun waking up to find Nefi standing before his throne, wishing him a good morning. Apparently, Nefi had been waiting for a while just to greet him and had been staring at his face while he slept. Upon realizing this, Zaegun blushes slightly. Nefi then informs him that she has prepared breakfast for him, leading them to the dining room of their vast castle. Zaegun, who has never had a meal made just for him, is astounded by how delicious it looks. Nefi's happiness shows as her long elf ears jiggle with joy. However, Nefi soon realizes that she forgot to make her own breakfast and didn't prepare a chair for herself either. In a tender and spontaneous gesture, Zaegun, now fully embracing his feelings for her, decides not only to share the meal, but also to share his chair with her. Nefi sits on his lap, and both of them blush intensely, acting like shy lovers. After their meal, they head to Zaegun's library, where he decides to teach Nefi a little about sorcery. He draws a sorceress circle and explains that channeling mana into these circles is what allows sorcerers to perform magic. He also teaches her the importance of preventing other sorcerers from hijacking one's circle, since anyone can cast their own mana into another's sorceress circle. These circles, or circuits, are essential in magic practice. Zaegun also mentions that creating a sorceress circle within a circle is generally impossible, as it would disrupt the flow of mana, but achieving such a feat would grant immense power. As Zaegun explains, he begins to realize how much he's enjoying this comfortable, natural conversation with Nefi. He's also delighted to see that she seems to have a talent for sorcery. Nefi, curious, asks Zaegun what he hopes to achieve by learning sorcery. Zaegun confesses that he's never thought much about it, but muses that it's likely for his own survival. Their peaceful moment is interrupted when the church attacks. Zaegun is amused to find their leader is none other than the girl he saved earlier, now wielding a sacred sword. This explains how they were able to break through the magical barrier surrounding his castle. The fight begins, and Zaegun fires a blast of energy at the girl, regretting that he let her go earlier, not knowing she was with the church. One of the knights steps in front of her, using a powerful shield to block the attack, which impresses Zaegun. Zaegun quickly takes down one knight with a single punch that shatters his armor and mocks another by breaking his sword, defeating him with a mere flick to the forehead. Zaegun takes a hostage and threatens to kill him unless the girl surrenders, but promises to spare him if she does. He then explains that he doesn't actually want to kill them and would prefer they return to the church to spread the word of his power. However, his attempt to act tough fails. The girl quickly sees through his facade, realizing that he isn't a killer at heart, unlike most sorcerers. Despite Zaegun's lack of bloodlust, the girl attacks with her sword once again. Zaegun manages to defend himself at first, but eventually takes a hit, being blown back and crashing into a tree. Surprisingly, the girl offers him mercy, recognizing the kindness in his eyes. She expresses her gratitude for saving her before and urges him to fake his death so the church will stop sending knights after him. She advises him to abandon his life as a sorcerer and live as a normal person, as sorcery is seen as inherently evil. At this moment, one of the knights launches a surprise attack on Nefi with a spear. Zaegun instinctively jumps in front of it, injuring his hand to protect her. This enrages Nefi, causing her to unleash her own magic in retaliation. She becomes consumed with anger, using her power to fend off the knights and seeming ready to kill them. Zaegun steps in, telling her to stop, which she does. The angelic knights retreat, and Zagun and Nefi return to the castle. Later, Nefi explains to Zagun that the magic she used was not sorcery, but something else: mysticism. This type of magic is rare, and only a few elves can perform it, but those who can are often deemed cursed. Nefi confesses that she was an outcast because of her mystical abilities, and that she hated the villagers who shunned her. In fact, she felt a twisted sense of happiness when those villagers were attacked, as she believed they deserved the suffering. Yet, at the same time, she felt immense guilt for harboring those thoughts. It was one of the reasons she shut off her emotions from others for so long. Zagun comforts her, reassuring her that she isn't wrong for feeling that way. He explains that the villagers were just as wicked as the attackers, and if it were up to him, he would have wiped them all out. His words soothe Nefi, and she breaks down, crying in her master's arms, releasing the burden of emotions she had been carrying for so long. In this episode, Nefi's emotions begin to surface as she opens up to Zagun after an intense moment where she finds comfort in his arms. She starts to talk more freely, something Zagun notices and enjoys. Meanwhile, Zagun also realizes that his wounds healed instantly because of Nefi's mysticism powers, to which he expresses his gratitude, causing Nefi to feel butterflies from the unexpected kindness. Zagun reflects on the fact that he isn't often kind to her, so when he is, Nefi treasures it deeply. Nefi tries to reassure Zagun that she doesn't expect constant praise or encouragement, as he is her master after all. Later that night, in an innocent yet intimate gesture, Nefi offers to sleep with him, not in the way you might think, but simply because there's only one bed in the entire castle. Zagun, although a bit disappointed by the innocent nature of her offer, declines, citing that his chair is important for maintaining the magical barriers around the castle. Still wanting to be close to him, Nefi offers her lap as a pillow, which Zagun accepts. In this moment, Zagun asks Nefi if she would be willing to learn sorcery from him, as he sees great potential in her. Nefi agrees, determined to learn in order to protect her master. From that point on, Nefi becomes Zagun's apprentice. The next day, Barbatos, an acquaintance of Zagun, pays a visit to discuss the recent attack from the church, where one of the knights wielded a sacred sword. Barbatos is surprised to learn that Zagun has made an elf his apprentice, and after he leaves, Nefi observes that Zagun actually enjoys Barbatos's company. Zagun, however, dismisses this notion and continues to ask Nefi to help him repair the barriers that the angelic knights had damaged. A month passes by pleasantly as Nefi grows more proficient in sorcery, although she still struggles to control her mysticism. Then, one day, Zagun receives a letter from the archdemons, summoning him to a trading hub called Kianoides. Beneath the hub lie ancient ruins where Zagun is invited. Despite his reservations, Zagun attends, knowing that he can't refuse the apex of sorcery. Upon arrival, Zagun is greeted by the overwhelming presence of the sorcerers, whose mana makes him feel small and vulnerable. However, their intentions are not hostile. In fact, they offer him the chance to become one of the archdemons. They reveal an emblem filled with immense mana, which Zagun would carry as a member of their order, inheriting all the power that comes with it. Zagun is skeptical, questioning why he was chosen when there are more powerful sorcerers. The archdemons explain that despite his relative inexperience, Zagun has a natural talent for sorcery, one that will soon make him the strongest of them all. Zagun agrees to their offer, but only under the condition that he is given the key to free Nefi from the collar around her neck. Even after being named an archdemon, Zagun's thoughts remain with Nefi. After returning home, Zagun frees Nefi from the collar, but tells her that she is no longer of any use to him. This shatters Nefi, but Zagun's harsh words are driven by love. He doesn't want her to get caught up in the dangerous world of the archdemons. Heartbroken, Nefi finds herself alone, wandering the streets outside the castle, missing her master deeply. Nefi ends up coming across an angelic knight, and it's none other than the same girl whom Zagun once saved. Nefi is so depressed that she is only thinking about being captured and killed by the angelic knight, as she was an apprentice to a sorcerer. This takes the angelic knight by surprise, as she clearly wasn't expecting this kind of reaction from her. They are both in a dark alleyway, But soon many people take notice of how the angelic knight and Nephi are alone in a dark alleyway. It turns out none of them are really fans of the church, and the angelic knights are popular for strong-arming people. They all think this angelic knight was no different, and that Nephi was being harassed. One girl with wings flies in between Nephi and the angelic knight to get Nephi to safety. It's none other than Manuela, the same person who sold Nephi her maid dress. However, Nephi clears the air and tells everyone that nothing is really wrong right now at all. Manuela, the angelic knight, Chastile, and Nephi head to a restaurant to cool off their heads. Nephi tells the two of them about how her master became one of the 13 most powerful archdemons and decided to leave Nephi for good. This leaves her in a tantrum, and she can't figure out why he'd just abandon her after a month of staying with her. Chastile thinks that Zagun might have been just using her, but this infuriates Nephi, and she immediately replies that her master is not that kind of person. They talk a little about how the church demands salvation offerings from the people, which has made them not so popular among the people. Nephi thinks that Chastile isn't the one to be blamed for this, as she's not the one asking for it. She's just serving the church, thinking that it's righteous. Chastile then talks about how the archdemons and the 12 sacred swords are always in a constant state of battle. Nephi then realizes that her master might have left her because he didn't want her to be a part of this battle. Chastile also mentions that there is good inside him, as he refrained from using full force when she battled against him, although she was deeply humiliated. Chastile then concludes that he's the kind of man who needs compassion, but unintentionally drives people away from himself. Nephi agrees with her instantly. This makes Nephi realize that Zagun might still be in need of help. She gets up and says that she is heading back to her master. Chastile and Manuela decide to help Nephi out on her journey, and the three of them become friends. Some of the angelic knights also come to the restaurant, and everyone seems to be forming an understanding. However, dark magic appears from nowhere and surrounds everyone. Then a voice claiming to be Zagun says that he's kidnapping everyone. The darkness engulfs everyone and teleports them someplace else. Since Manuela has wings, she is the only person who's able to escape the darkness. Having full faith that Zagun can't possibly be the sorcerer behind the kidnapping, she flees to Zagun's castle, where she finds that he has captured 3 angelic knights who fell into his trap. Manuela tells him about everything, and she tells him how Nephi has been trying her best to get back to him. This touches Zagun deeply, as he didn't expect to be missed by Nephi after treating her so harshly. He confesses that all sorcerers are trash and care about nothing but themselves. However, since Nephi belongs to Zagun, he says that he'll do anything possible to save her. He even takes the angelic knights with him upon their keen interest in saving Chastile. He uses magic and teleports everyone, saying he already knows who the culprit is. Meanwhile, Nephi and Chastile are tied up and can't do anything. The culprit soon reveals himself to be the traitor Barbados, who was perhaps the only friend that Zagun had. Barbados reveals to the two of them that there is no such thing as a friend in the realm of sorcerers. He then reveals that the first sorcerer that Zagun ever killed was a teacher of Barbados. Not that he cared about his master, it's just that the castle he lives in and all the money he acquired after killing him was supposed to be his loot after he'd successfully killed his master himself. Unfortunately, Zagun got to him first, albeit it was out of self-defense. Barbados felt cheated. He reveals that he's been trying to get Zagun by different means for quite some time, but none of his tactics ever worked. Nephi gives him the harsh news that Zagun is now actually an archdemon too, and that he'll be coming to rescue her any time. This takes Barbados completely by surprise, and initially, he's shocked. However, he soon gains his flair back and breaks the shackle of Nephi in order to continue on with the sacrifice. Nephi screams that she only belongs to her master, Zagun. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Zagun himself appears and compliments Nephi for showing him loyalty. Zagun appears out of nowhere and has a little chat with the traitor Barbados, but he doesn't seem surprised at all, and Barbados is taken aback by how quickly he's discovered by Zagun. Zagun then continues to say that he's been suspicious of Barbados for quite some time. As a matter of fact, since the first time his barriers were broken, he had set his suspicions on Barbados because only he could easily break Zagun's barriers. He also knows that summoning and teleportation spells were the strong suit of Barbatos, meaning that he could have easily executed the plan to capture Nefi. After a small chat, Zagun goes straight into aggression mode, taking down Barbados's arm and leg. He rushes straight to Nefi and sets her free. As soon as Nefi gets free from her shackles, instead of getting angry at her master for leaving her, she feels an instant remorse for her master as she senses the loneliness behind that decision of his. She immediately jumps into her master's arms to give him a hug and starts crying. This makes Zagun admire Nefi even more, as even though he was the one who abandoned Nefi, all this time she was only thinking about Zagun. However, the cute moment is quickly disturbed by Barbados, as he can't stand being ignored like a weakling. He immediately claims that he's not dead, and that they're too quick to celebrate. He casts a sorceress circle and tries to attack Zagun and Nefi. This makes Nefi a bit afraid, but Zagun reassures her and says that nothing will happen. The sorceress circle created by Barbados is destroyed as soon as it was made. This leaves Barbados completely shocked at what just happened, so he tries again a few times. However, the result was exactly the same. Then Zagun explains what's going on. He has the ability to mimic the exact sorceress circle his enemies make, and that gives him the ability to nullify his enemies' attacks. Barbados began to wonder if that was the trick he got from his late master, but that wasn't true in the least, Zagun replied. In fact, it was this skill that helped Zagun defeat the mentor of Barbados. He was just a kid when the mentor of Barbados tried to kill Zagun, and when he killed him, it was the first time he had ever used sorcery. By a complete fluke, he managed to replicate the sorceress circle of his predator and managed to nullify and reverse his attack entirely. That was not only the first time he had killed someone, but also the first time Zagun had used sorcery. This infuriates Barbados as he tries his best to take down Zagun by opening many sorceress circuits at once. However, Zagun manages to nullify each and every one of them. After that, he takes the offensive and easily brings Barbados down to his knees. He asserts dominance over Barbados, saying that the archdemons have nicknamed him as the Demon Slayer. He comes closer to Barbados and gathers his powers into his fist and seemingly strikes him on the face. As the dust clears, it is revealed that he punches on his side in the rock, sparing Barbados. Being spared by Zagun hurts Barbados's ego a lot. The only thing Barbados had to do in return for being spared was to bring Zagun expensive and high-quality liquor. The last punch that Zagun lands on the rock ends up messing with a huge sorceress circuit that Barbados had created. It was meant to summon a true demon. And after being messed with by Zagun accidentally, that's exactly what it did. Then out of nowhere, a huge black monster came into being. The amount of mana it possessed made the man possessed by archdemons pale in comparison, and Zagun could sense the doom that it could bring about. Just as they had lost all hope, the monster ends up kneeling to Zagun and acknowledges him as his master. It isn't because Zagun had summoned him, but because Zagun carried the emblem of the archdemons. This made Zagun even more mesmerized at what he had inherited. He swiftly orders the demon to return to where he came from, and it follows Zagun's commands. The whole cave is about to collapse, so everyone runs for the exit. The angelic knights are waiting outside, and they take Chastille. Manuela goes with them. Barbatos disappears as well. This leaves Zagun alone with Nefi again after a while. They are both kind of shy about it, and are having a hard time making eye contact. Clearly, Zagun is trying to confess that he has feelings for Nefi and decides to say the 3 magic words, but he isn't able to follow through with them and simply grabs Nefi and tells her that she's going to be his forever. Nefi also confesses that she wants to be with Zagun no matter what, and she also asks him to let her wear the slave collar he bought her. Zagun objects to this idea, but Nefi likes to think of the collar as something that connects Nefi and her master. Hearing this, Zagun lets Nefi wear the collar. Not much later, the news spreads amongst the people that Zagun had been crowned as the new archdemon. Some fear him, whereas others are aware of his generosity. Meanwhile, Chastile is relieved of her duty as an angelic knight as she tries to defend the sorcerer Zagun in front of the cardinal. Even though the other members plead in her favor, nothing was to be done, and Chastile accepted her fate with grace. Chastile always had with her one of the 12 sacred swords. However, now that she was relieved of her duties, the sword was to be taken from her. The cardinal reminds Chastile that this punishment was necessary, as the mistake she made was not forgivable, but the sacred swords choose their masters, so it's unlikely that the punishment would last for long. He advises her to be patient and promises her that her rank would eventually be restored. The cardinal also tells Chastile that there is trouble arriving at the church. One of the sacred swords, Raphael Hurandel, is arriving at the church. He is famous for his hate for sorcerers and brutal ways. Saying this, he thinks that this is currently best for Chastile. This takes Chastile by surprise, and she now has to take action about this scenario. Meanwhile, Zagun is busy trying to research and get to know about his new powers. He is busy looking at books from his library when Nephi tries to surprise him from behind and act all cute. After surprising him from the back, Nephi becomes all flustered and doesn't know what to do. This makes Zagun's heart flutter on the inside, but as usual, he isn't able to express how he feels. Instead, he just asks Nephi if she needs anything, coming off as completely cold and uninterested. Nephi tells her master that she is excited to serve him some home-cooked meals. After reaching the dining table, Zagun is amazed by the variety of dishes available to him for just one meal. He starts eating, and it sends him straight to heaven. He loves every bite. Then for dessert, Nephi presents him with pudding. This is loved by Zagun a lot, and Nephi mentions that she actually learned it from Manuela. Before he could finish his pudding, his barriers are interrupted. Zagun remains unfazed and wishes to just focus on his pudding, as eating homemade food should obviously hold a higher priority. Unfortunately, the perpetrator is able to cut through his barriers quite quickly and enters the room before Zagun could take another bite. Zagun is impressed and thinks to himself that he really needs to strengthen the barriers. The enemy is a huge armored figure and strikes with all its might with its fist straight at Zagun's face. He easily stops the attack and counters effectively enough to set it unconscious. As the helmet of the man is taken off, it's revealed that the one behind the attack was just a little girl. Upon Nephi's insistence, Zagun takes her to a room and gives her aid. When she wakes up, she is surprised to learn that the very person she attacked is giving her aid. Zagun says that the only reason she's alive is because Nephi asked him to spare her. However, Nephi thinks that it's because Zagun is genuinely a nice person. The girl's name is Valifor, and the reason she attacked Zagun was that she had no one to look after her, and that killing the newest archdemon might give her some sort of power. This trait reminds Zagun a lot about his past self. Even though the girl is in human form, Zagun recognizes that she is actually a dragon. He then mentions that dragons are quite rare mythical creatures, and humans have, for the most part, tortured them in different ways or forms, which is why she had to keep herself hidden in that huge armor, giving the impression of a large man. She was also delighted to hear that she won't be subjected to any kind of death as a dragon, since that is what humans have aimed to do with her. However, Zagun was attacked by her, so he does decide to punish her, and her punishment is that she will help Nephi with looking after the castle. After commanding that Zagun had some leftovers, he decides to give the leftover food to Valifor. She takes the first bite of it with skepticism, but soon realizes that the food is actually delicious, and starts eating a lot faster. She says that the food tastes delicious. Zagun replies, of course, it would taste delicious as Nephi made it. He then stands up and begins to leave the room and tells Valifor to help out Nephi. This shocks Valifor, and she says that isn't Zagun afraid of how she will act, given this much freedom since she is the enemy. Zagun says that he isn't worried about that as Nephi is also stronger than Valifor. He gives off the impression that he isn't concerned about Nephi, but in reality, when Nephi and Valifor are working together, he's spying on them secretly and eavesdropping on their conversation. Valifor asks Nephi why she sticks around with Zagun, and she replies that Zagun doesn't treat her like a slave, so she willingly stays here and is happy. Valifor realizes that she has never had a place like that in her life before. She again comes across Zagun some days later and asks him what he will do if suddenly one day Valifor decides to attack him and take him out by surprise. Zagun replies, acting all arrogant, that he has no problem with that at all, as long as Valifor is prepared for the consequences of her actions, which basically means that she'll have to spend more time helping Neffy out at the castle. One day, when they're all having a meal together, Zagun finally decides to help Valifor learn sorcery. This takes her by even greater surprise as to why on earth would a sorcerer willingly make an enemy powerful. Zagun replies that he actually thinks that knowledge is something that is meant to be stolen. In fact, this entire castle and the library he possesses is because he stole it from another sorcerer. Also, he mentions that Valifor is still just a child, and she should have the rights and privileges of one, acting all innocent instead of being a slave to someone or a threat. This touches Valifor deeply, and she ends up going straight to bed right after having her meal. This makes Zagun realize how much she was yearning just to be an innocent kid. Both Neffy and Zagun look at the innocent dragon fast asleep and have a cute conversation about how having Valifor with them is like having a child. The next episode starts off with Valifor writing in her diary. She's gotten along with Zagun and Neffy quite nicely and doesn't have a problem opening up anymore. However, she's quite observant of both of them. She realizes that Neffy stares at Zagun's face when he's asleep, and she's actually even caught Neffy sitting on Zagun's lap when he was giving Neffy sorcery lessons in the library. Naturally, the first thing they did after being discovered like that was to distance themselves from each other. Valifor wondered if that was something she wasn't supposed to witness. Then one day, they decide to go to the town together, all three of them. Valifor meets Manuela, and they try out some new outfits for her. As they're strolling through the streets, Zagun realizes that he has a sort of protective instinct for Valifor. He's amazed that he has always had that kind of sentiment locked inside of him, even as a sorcerer. Regardless, he feels the need to protect Valifor at all costs. It's not exactly the kind of feeling he has for Neffy, he recognizes immediately, but he realizes that Valifor has become important to him. Meanwhile, the angelic knight Chastille is roaming around in the same town, wondering why she ended up defending Zagun in front of the church. Because of this, she's lost all her honor, her sacred sword, and even her armor. She's seen roaming around in normal civilian clothes for the first time. She wonders about Zagun having a family with Neffy, and thinks that he'd actually make a great family man. She genuinely wants Zagun to be happy, but is a little upset that he might never learn that she stood up against the church for him. Just as she was wondering about these things, she ends up coming across Zagun, Neffy, and Valifor. She's taken completely by surprise and wonders how Neffy and Zagun have already made a baby. Zagun and Neffy are shocked by this presumption, and Zagun clears the air by saying they haven't done anything like that yet, to which Chastille asks, "What do you mean yet?" However, Zagun doesn't recognize Chastille at all and just ends up asking who she is. This breaks Chastille's heart, and she ends up pouring tears from her eyes. Neffy gets slightly angry at Zagun and reminds him that it's Chastille. Zagun then recognizes the angelic knight, saying that he couldn't earlier because this is the first time he's seen her without her armor. Realizing that Chastille is an angelic knight, Valifor gets quite angry and starts to reveal her dragon side by transforming her hand. Zagun tells her to calm down and asks her why she hates angelic knights so much, to which she replies that does a sorcerer need a reason to hate an angelic knight? Zagun says that they mostly don't, as it comes off naturally. Valifor says that it's the same thing for dragons. They hate them just as much. Meanwhile, 3 knights of the church who are directly under Chastille come to her and take her back to the church. Later, Zagun decides to bring Neffy and Valifor to the same underground castle where he was dubbed one of the members of the archdemons. Valifor senses that dragons once lived in this place, and then they decide to enter the castle. Valifor senses a circuit drawn on the floor that she could use because it was dragon magic that made it. She uses it, and it opens a secret passage that leads to a room where they find tons of books and knowledge stored. Zagun wants all 3 of them to look for anything that could help him understand archdemons. Valifor quickly comes across a book explaining the sacred sword. Zagun quickly takes it from her and recognizes that there is writing on the sword that is not much different from the writing on his archdemon emblem. He's convinced that there is some kind of correlation between archdemons and sorcerers, and he's confident that he can get a lot of information from this library. Meanwhile, Chastile is brought in front of the new sacred sword member known as Raphael. He asks Chastile how many sorcerers she's killed up until now, to which she replies that the number of kills is not something to brag about. This strikes Raphael's nerves, as he's the angelic knight with the most number of sorcerers killed. He admires Chastile's guts for being able to talk in such a tone with him, but quickly wants to take her on in a duel to punish her for the disrespect. The cardinal comes to save Chastile, and tells Raphael that he has no right to kill a fellow angelic knight. At this point, Chastile insults Raphael again, questioning his morals if this is how he treats people as a member of the angelic knights, and this really infuriates him. The cardinal, seeing how Raphael is an uncontrollable wild card, decides to bestow Chastile's sacred sword back to her, and when he does that, Raphael immediately leaves. This makes Chastile believe that for whatever reason, he wanted Chastile to wield her sword again, but she can't make up her mind as to why he'd want that. Meanwhile, Zagun is drinking booze with Barbatos, and they seem to be best buddies again, despite the recent events that had transpired. He mentions the new knight that has arrived and that he's after Zagun himself. Just as Barbatos and Zagun are having their conversation, an angelic knight appears out of nowhere, interrupting them. Barbatos is shocked, as it's none other than the one who arrived at the church from outside town, named Raphael. Barbatos is scared, but the first thing he does is charge and strike him down using his sorceress circuit. However, Zagun cancels his sorcery instantly. Barbatos asks why he did that, and Zagun simply replies that it doesn't seem like this one is out for blood. Which turns out to be true, as Raphael was just seeking an audience with the newest archdemon, Zagun. He asks if Chastile is someone who poses a threat to Zagun, and Zagun replies, she's much stronger than any opponent he's ever faced. Raphael then concludes that she should be killed, as she poses a great threat to the church now. Not only is she very strong, but she has already spoken in favor of a sorcerer in front of the church. This gets Zagun worried about what he should do in this situation, as he feels really bad for Chastile. After making small talk with Zagun, the angelic knight leaves, concluding that he's indeed every bit as evil as the rumors had suggested, although Zagun does warn him that. Worried about Chastile, Zagun sends Barbatos after her, seeing as he's very talented at teleportation magic. However, he ends up leaving without paying for the booze, which made Zagun feel dumb for doing what he did. Zagun goes back to the castle to discover Nephi waiting for him in his chambers, with Valifor sleeping on her lap. Zagun sits close to Nephi, and Nephi ends up mentioning the cutest thing. To her, having Valifor with them is like having a daughter. This makes Zagun blush really hard. He subconsciously ends up getting closer, holding Nephi's face in his hands, realizing that she smells really nice and that her hair is still wet from the shower she just took. It's amazing that he finds himself leaning forward for a kiss. This makes Nephi blush really hard, yet at the same time, she complies. Just as their lips are about to meet, out of nowhere Barbatos' voice appears and his portal opens. Just as he's about to come out of the portal, Zagun stands over it in rage and wants him to leave. But he actually came because Chastile was poisoned and he brought her over. Zagun puts his own interests aside and understands the urgency of the situation. All the noise wakes up Valifor, and the first thing she sees is Chastile with a sacred sword. This instantly snaps her, and she charges in for an attack, but Zagun instantly stops it and tells her to stand down. Zagun makes Valifor understand that even though she's an angelic knight, she's still not the one who killed her father, so she shouldn't be blamed for a sin she didn't commit. Also, killing her would mean more enemies for Valifor, which would be a strategically dumb thing to do. Then he tells Valifor that he'll help her get revenge and teach her how to do it properly. According to him, revenge isn't satisfying until you torture someone to the extent that they start begging for death, and then, and only then, should they be killed. He remembers how he instantly killed the person he hated, which was a failed revenge, as the torture he had to go through because of it was much worse. He didn't want Valifor to make the same mistake, and she doesn't really know how to respond to Zagun's generosity, so she just complies and agrees to not harm Chastile. Zagun decides to keep Chastile in the castle for her own protection, and she ends up coming under the direct control of Niffy. Even though Valefor promises to never attack Chastile, she still ends up teasing her and playing pranks on her whenever she gets the chance. It was her way of expressing anger towards Chastile and the angelic knights without using her powers, as Zagun forbade it at all costs. Over time, she realizes that she doesn't really enjoy teasing Chastile anymore, and couldn't even kill her now, no matter how much she wanted to, as Chastile just ended up becoming a part of the family to her. Then one day, Neffy is seen running towards Zagun in absolute agony and says that Valefor has left them with no trace to be found. Valefor is reflecting in her diary about her time in Zagun and Neffy's castle, expressing her deep appreciation for the sense of belonging they have given her. However, she struggles with her desire for revenge against her father's murderer, feeling that staying with them might lead her to forget this crucial goal. This inner conflict angers her, prompting her to decide to leave and search for power to avenge her father. Using her dragon wings, Valefor escapes the castle and heads to the underground castle, where Zagun was crowned an archdemon, believing she could find something to enhance her power. Just as she attempts to use sorcery to open the castle gates, Raphael, the angelic knight she recognizes from her father's death, appears. In a fit of rage, Valefor charges at him, but she soon realizes she is outmatched. At that moment, Zagun intervenes, blocking Raphael's attack. When Raphael questions why an archdemon would protect Valefor, Zagun proudly claims her as his daughter. Having previously fought Chastile, Zagun is aware of the sacred sword's ability to penetrate sorcerer magic circuits. He has since devised a sorcerer circuit that can defend against such attacks. As Raphael relentlessly assaults him, Zagun successfully deflects each strike. Eventually, he counters and sends Raphael crashing into the castle door with tremendous force. To Zagun's surprise, Raphael survives this powerful blow. Meanwhile, Chastile awakens in Zagun's castle, learning about the situation from Neffy. She feels a strong urge to help Zagun, but grapples with the irony of an angelic knight fighting another angelic knight alongside a sorcerer. Despite her admiration for Zagun and her desire to protect him, she feels guilty about opposing the church. Neffy comforts her, reassuring Chastile that she understands what is right and wrong and encourages her not to be ashamed of doing the right thing. With newfound determination, Chastile uses a portal accidentally left open by Barbados to join the fight. Just as Raphael is about to strike Valefor, Chastile arrives and successfully defends her. However, their battle inadvertently awakens a powerful golem, the castle's guardian, which Zagun fears. Realizing that his previous attacks have compromised the castle's barrier, Zagun attempts to control the golem using his archdemon emblem, but fails. Instead, he resorts to using his magic, defeating the golem but leaving Raphael wounded and vulnerable for questioning by Valefor. Raphael reveals his side of the story and explains that he actually admired Valefor's father more than anything, and that he never betrayed him. He admired the dragon Oribos more than anyone. On the day that Oribos died, he actually asked Oribos to help him fight a demon, and he died trying to defeat it. Valefor couldn't bring herself to believe that this was the case, as she saw Raphael drinking the blood of her father. However, the reason Raphael drank Oribos's blood was that Oribos wanted him to love more than anything. The main goal of Oribos and Raphael had always been to end the fight between the sorcerers and the angelic knights, as they needed to join their hands in order to fend off the demons from the other realm, who are a real threat to this world. Before the conversation could go on any further, the golem that Zagun had taken down earlier was starting to get back up. It turns out that it was no ordinary golem and had been enhanced by the owner of the castle, Machios. Zagun actually gets excited as it gives him an opportunity to try out some new things. Just as he's about to take it head-on, Chastile offers her help and stands by his side. Zagun smiles and asks her if she's okay helping a sorcerer. Chastile replies that she'll help him, even if he's a sorcerer. She charges in without her armor and just the sacred sword. She takes a beam of energy head-on and cuts through it like it was nothing, giving Zagun an opening to attack and finish it off for good. They come back to Raphael, who further explains that he was always the nice guy. It turns out that during the time in the bar, he was trying to warn Zagun that the church had made Chastile an enemy, and the first time he met Chastile, he was actually proud that she thought killing the sorcerers didn't matter to her. It turns out his absurd tone and the way he talked about things always gave people the wrong impression of his nature. In fact, he was unaware of his reputation as a strict and unjust person. In his mind, he was always trying to establish a dialogue with all the sorcerers he encountered, not knowing that he had always been intimidating them, which fueled the fight in the first place. Anyways, the day is saved, and they all head back home for now. Meanwhile, in the church, it is revealed that the cardinal is agitated at the thought of Chastile still being alive. As it turns out, he's the one who poisoned her. Raphael comes to his chambers, and realizing what a terrible deed he had done, he feels no remorse in killing him. Raphael ends up feeling sorry for Valifor and wants to do whatever he can to serve her, and her response is that she'd want Raphael to serve Zagun. So it turns out he'll also be staying in the castle with them all. The next and final episode begins with Valifor writing in her diary, where she confesses that she is very grateful to Zagun for saving her. She even confesses that she's much more open to Zagun and has made up her mind about staying at his castle for good, as she finds him quite appealing. She's successfully made terms with her demons and has accepted the deep, heartfelt apology of Raphael, who's now a butler for Zagun and lives in the castle with them. She still can't help but be annoyed by him a bit, as he doesn't let Valifor observe Nefi and Zagun when they're having their cute romantic moments. According to him, Valifor is still too young to be witnessing these things. Zagun openly goes around the town whenever he wants, and he's quite popular among the people that live there now. Everyone thinks of Nefi as his wife, and Valifor as his daughter. Zagun has never been so fulfilled with everyone now living in his castle. He confesses that he is now more fulfilled than ever. One day, he goes to the town, ends up buying a phonograph from Manuela, and gives her a lot of money for it, even though it's broken, as she intends on helping some poor kids with the amount she receives. He fixes the phonograph, and it makes the most beautiful music he's ever heard. However, his ears witnessed an even more melodious sound, and that was hearing Nefi sing for the first time. Being taken about by the romantic moment, he ends up impulsively asking Nefi to dance. The only problem was that he had never danced before and didn't know a single step. In came Raphael to the rescue. He offers to teach Zagun a few simple steps so he could enjoy his moment with Nefi. This marked the beginning of a new relationship that Zagun and Nefi are set to embark on. The next day, Zagun put the phonograph in the middle of the town, and everyone got to share the lovely music it made with Zagun and Nefi. It turned into an epic festival where everyone was happy, and it was all thanks to Zagun.